Hello, my name is Chloe Gong. I am the author of These Violent Delights, up there, and Our Violent Ends, and I am here today to answer all of your burning questions that I have seen submitted regarding my book, so let's dive right into it. The first question that has been submitted is, if you could choose actors to play the main characters, who would you choose? See, this is always a really hard question for me because there are so few actors that are within the age range of my characters and so few like Chinese and Russian actors that are currently in Hollywood that we can see to cast, right? So the answer to this is that I don't have very good answers, but I have once identified a model who I think looks very much like an older Roma would. I think his name is Ivan Zvakin. Yeah, I think that's it. He's the closest that I've seen that would actually fit, and then potentially the Chinese actress Nini could be an older Juliet. But otherwise, this is a very, very hard question. Okay. Question number 2. When you started writing, did you know what end Roma and Juliet would have? I did and I didn't, because These Violent Delights originally started as a very different manuscript. And back then, when it was both These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends together in one big book, Romeo and Juliet actually had a different ending. So I knew about that ending, and then the more I worked on the book, I decided to change it a little, and the moment I did decide to change it, I also then knew what their new ending would be. So I always have an idea when I go into it, but it hasn't always remained the same, is the answer. Okay, number 3. How was the world building process of These Violent Delights? Very, very research heavy. A lot of research went into it, both in that I was camping out at the library and sat down in the shelf in front of 1930s, 1920s Shanghai and just went through every single book and flipped through it to see what information I could find. That, and I would also talk to my family members. I would ask my parents about, what they knew about 1920 Shanghai. And specifically, a lot of my older relatives had a lot of thoughts as well. Who would he be? My great uncle was like, there are so many banks in Shanghai that you should write into your book. And I was like, thank you. I will look into that. So a lot of, primary source research and a lot of just seeing what people know. Okay, number 4. What was the biggest challenge you faced while writing the books? I would say because These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends is retelling, one of the hardest things to keep balanced is the original story that I'm working with and that I want to pay homage to and I want to do justice to, right? The whole Romeo and Juliet part, but also keeping it something of my own. Because, it is a retelling for a reason. I do have to add my own spin to it. How much of the original do I keep and how much new stuff do I introduce, right? Okay, number 5. Was there anything you discovered while doing historical research that you felt you needed to include? That is one of my biggest problems. The issue of how much to include, because I want to include everything. I am a big, big history nerd. Everything that I end up reading about, I'm like, oh my god, this is fascinating. I need to put it into my novel. But ultimately, it is a novel, not a textbook. So it doesn't look as great when you put like 10 paragraphs of like, and then this military unit marched from this street to the other street. So there was a lot that I discovered, a lot of just in general things that happened in the war, in the Civil War, just fun facts mostly, fun, bad, sad facts, but fun facts nonetheless about just history in general that I thought would be fascinating, but ultimately it's the story that matters the most, and we're here to follow Romeo and Juliet. We're not necessarily here to learn about what the first unit military did in 1927, right? Sadly. Okay. Question number 6. If you could spend an hour with your characters, who would you be with and what would you ask them? I would love to spend an hour with Marshall, probably. I would love to spend an hour with all of them. I think all of them are really fun, and they wouldn't be my characters if I didn't think they were fun, right? If I write them, they have to have something interesting going on for them. But specifically for Marshall, I think he is one of the funnier, more chaotic characters. So an hour with him would just be really, really fun, as opposed to, an hour with Benedict would be interesting too, but he might just get really sad and start talking about the meaning of life. Not that that's not great. Depends on what I'm feeling, I think, for that hour. Okay. Question number 7. Where did the idea of a Romeo and Juliet retelling come from? It was the themes that came first. So I wanted to write a blood feud story. I wanted to write about two families at war. And when I got that idea, it is impossible to pitch something like that without someone going, oh, it sounds just like Romeo and Juliet. So my decision was to lean right into the comparison rather than be like, oh, no, it's nothing like Romeo and Juliet. It is. You can't write a blood feud story without invoking Romeo and Juliet in some way. So because I wanted to do the themes and I knew that there were already similarities with the big, Western canon of a blood feud and two families at war, I was like, I may as well just do a Romeo and Juliet retelling, and that'll make it more interesting if I just lean right into it, right? Okay. Number 8. Could you describe these violent delights in 3 words that can convince someone to read it? Violent, delightful, mysterious. Ha ha ha. Okay. Question number 9. Did you have a very difficult character to develop, and why? Yeah, I would say maybe Tyler, Juliet's cousin, was the most difficult character to develop because it's very clear from the get-go that he's not likable. He's annoying. Everyone wants him dead in the ground. That was intentional too. There's not really any, argument that he is secretly a hero. He is quite starkly opposed to Juliet. And because Juliet is our main character, we're seeing the world from her eyes. We don't like Tyler either because he's standing in her way. But even though he is intentionally very, very rude, mean, all of those things, I still wanted there to be a sense that he was coming from a righteous place. You can do a lot of terrible things, but still think that you are justified in doing it. And I wanted the reader to kind of understand where he was coming from, even if they don't agree with him. And that kind of bled into, his ultimate fate in Our Violent Ends. And it was very hard to work with that and make sure that it succeeded. So I would say that was the biggest challenge, but hopefully it did succeed, Okay, final question, number 10. Can we expect news in 2022? So, some news has already come out. It's been revealed that there is a spin-off to These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends. It's called Foul Lady Fortune. It's coming out September of this year, and it is following Rosalind Lang, who you first met in these original duology books, but now 4 years have passed, and she is a assassin/spy for the Chinese government because the Japanese Empire is marching into the country, and some strange things are happening in the city with people dying. So Rosalind has to go undercover with a fellow spy, pretend to be married, and figure out what's going on. And it's a lot of fun. I'm very, very excited for that book to come out. But, maybe there'll be some more news lurking in 2022. I guess you'll just have to stay tuned and see what happens, see what gets put out into the world. But I'm always going to be writing books and telling stories, so hopefully in 2022 and in the future to come, you're going to get a lot more Chloe Gong books and Chloe Gong universe stories. So thanks for tuning in with me while I answered these burning questions. Hopefully they were burning, hopefully not icy questions, but it was a lot of fun, and thank you for reading, thank you for watching, and